the New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. Great to be back again. Today, two great guests. We've got Mark Duncan joining us from Cyclone Computer and Andrew Fox from Aruba. Great to have you both here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, maybe we can start with you, a quick intro on where you fit into this big wide world of tech here in New Zealand.
Okay. So I'm one of the service delivery managers for Cyclone Computers. And so Cyclone Computers are basically a nationwide IT provider. We do a lot of procurement and IT support and that around the country. So so we kind of work across a whole range of markets based out of Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, and Dunedin. And we've sort of been in the business for over 25 years, New Zealand owned. So pretty good actually.
That's fantastic. And Andrew, how about you?
Well, I'm lucky enough to lead an amazing team here at Aruba in New Zealand. Aruba is the part of Hewlett Packard Enterprise that looks after what we call the intelligent edge or the network. Been in the job for around about 6 years, but been in IT for many more than that. But having a ball in such a high growth and intense industry, I think it's fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And 6 years, that's quite a stint. So you must be pretty happy with the progress that Aruba have been, making over the years, because Aruba's a really, really big player. Where do you sit in the market?
So number 2 globally, very, very high growth sort of, and part of it is the way the world is changing and the way we as consumers are changing the way we use the network, but growing at many times the market, which is great because it means we're taking share from our competitors, which is awesome.
And we've got a Kiwi fit. I remember we've had a little bit of a chat over the years around Kiwis doing well in Silicon Valley and around the world, and on the New Zealand Business Podcast. I don't know how many years ago it was, but caught up with David Hughes in San Francisco to hear about his little startup called Silver Peak. No, not so little, I suppose,
no,
because Aruba acquired them for 1 billion New Zealand dollars. And what's his role now? He's got quite a key
He
role.
has got a key role now. So he's basically our CTO. Yeah. He has another title which I momentarily can't remember, but ultimately he is, he's the guy in charge of the offerings that we take to market. So really exciting. And that was an amazing acquisition, the incredible tech, which I guess our challenge now is to weave that tech into everything that we do. So that work is underway. But it's great to have a Kiwi, in one of the top seats. I think it's really exciting.
Yeah. Well, I think David Hughes is very, very capable, and great. It's always great to see those Kiwis that are doing well on the global stage.
Yep.
And obviously, a reflection of that skill set that he's landed in such a key role. That's great. Well, lots to talk about. There's always a lot going on in the tech world, and the same this week as there was. A couple of local things I wanted to delve into. And some of these are discussions that have probably been going on over the last couple of weeks, but I think it's good for us to maybe a little bit of a tech angle on them too, because they've been covered in the mainstream media, but what I tend to find is it can be very shallow. I did an interview over the weekend for One News talking about this new mandate, European Union, to do with USB-C and being forced onto Apple. But I think they were here in the studio here for maybe half an hour or so, and bits and pieces. And by the time you end up with sort of a 2 or 3 minute story, and across all the different people sort of speaking, everyone gets about 15 seconds or 30 seconds or something. So we might go a little bit deeper on some of these things. But National have been, as an opposition party does, sort of, waving their flag and saying, "Hey, we're going to do this and that to make New Zealand a better place when we get into sort of government." I think they're probably being rather presumptuous based on current polling or, whatever it is. But they're talking about really controlling social media and other aspects of gangs can put their logo and promote themselves and so on. But then there's been some pushback and saying, well, we've got a Bill of Rights here, and there's I guess a level of free speech. How do you balance that? And what would it actually do? And is it actually possible to stop, say, gang insignia from appearing? And
isn't that playing whack-a-mole, though? You stop it in one place, and it'll just pop in another. There's very little you could actually do to control it, I think, because the internet is the internet. It's very difficult to control it. So
you block it in one place, because how could you block it? You could block it through an algorithm that's kind of recognizing and saying, okay, that's illegal to sort of show, and then there are all sorts of ways that people get around that. So as you say, it's sort of whack-a-mole of trying to do it. But you've got that, which we've seen with other content where it's being reported by users who, I saw that shouldn't be on there, and there's a level of reporting.
Yep.
How good that stuff plays out varies, how long it takes. But you also then get the flip side, which is all the false positives, right?
Yep.
And
my post has been taken down because someone clicked the has gang insignia button. But I technically it's possible. It's really difficult, but I wonder whether, as you said before, whether you should. It's a slippery slope. It'd be an interesting debate to have, but
they would need to get the social media companies on board, though, wouldn't they, to really sort of try and lock that down?
I guess there's a level, like we saw with the Christchurch Call. There's a level whereby putting it out there that you will get tech firms, social media firms who will maybe come on board and they say, that's really bad, but depending on what it is and whether it's got a global relevance, you probably get to a point where you have to bring legislation, put legislation into play to bring about the change. Like with that, the European Union saying we're going to force USB-C as the standard for charging phones and a whole range of other gadgets in future. Yeah. So in order to do that, the way they're going to get that across the line is just by saying, no, we're mandating it. That's the rule.
And if you want to play here,
and you have to go with it.
Our rules.
Now, we were talking before the show started about these RAM rates that are going on. That is something that, from what I'm picking, has been coming through social media, TikTok and so on, probably a mix of online or promoted through those mechanisms by going somewhat viral. No doubt there are people that are talking and making the decisions to do this stuff from just normal everyday conversations, but there's probably a level here where technology has facilitated and is enabling this and encouraging folks to get a little bit of infamy or what have you by getting involved.
There's been a bit of a history. Been a bit of a history of people sort of showboating what they're doing and then displaying to others, which then motivates others to sort of compete. It's fighting on the playground or there was a very bad thing a while ago where someone was doing something sexually inappropriate and that was shared around. And, obviously technology is not making them do it, but it's promoting it and therefore enabling others to do it. You could blame technology, but I don't think technology is at fault. They're just providing a mechanism for them to actually broadcast it, aren't they?
It does, unfortunately, make it very easy to broadcast, if you're after notoriety.
Yes.
Exactly. If you're after proving that you can do this thing, unfortunately, it makes it really easy for the next 10, 15, 100 kids, because most of them are kids, to see this and think, I could do that.
It seems like it's like tagging.
Yes.
Right. But the next level of it, and with the tech enablement. Now, of course, tagging in, hard to get to places, right? You can see why that might get some attention. How did that person get their tag up?
I wonder that every day I drive down the motorway.
And so on, right? So there's that sort of, level that we see. Yeah. I guess this is that much kind of more extreme that it sort of, plays into some of those similar.
It's reaching a wider audience, isn't it?
Yeah,
much faster.
There's also real victims, and I mean, I'm sure there's real victims with tagging, but now we're talking people's livelihoods and
these are the sort of
safety.
next level.
It's completely next level.
And
Absolutely.
when it keeps happening, right? So is there a technological solution on these things, or is it just we say this is a societal issue that's too big? Tech, does tech play a part in solving?
There's always
things?
a solution. It's just whether socially people want to accept it. And look at guns. In America, they have a big problem, but there's a reasonably large body of people who don't want to be controlled with guns. It needs to be socially taken on board and people to support it. Once you get that, then change can happen. So yes, there is a solution, but do we all want it? Maybe not.
It's not easy, is it, though? Because there's a
No,
lot of
it's
people
hard.
to keep happy with all sorts of different, viewpoints and feelings. And
Absolutely.
tech can do this, but legislation can do this, but actually bringing it together, these things it's an absolute minefield.
Start a list of objectionable content. That list's going to get pretty big pretty fast, and that then becomes unwieldy and unmanageable.
I'm in favour of free speech. I don't think we should be squashing. Well, I think anything that causes harm is a problem, but
that's the challenge, isn't it? Where do you define
that's the problem?
What's that line? And again, you won't please everyone on these fronts.
No,
right?
no, and that's the tricky part socially. How far do you go?
Yeah,
be hard.
Well, I think we've got quite a few more interesting years ahead when it comes to throwing governments and media and whoever throwing tantrums at social media companies and tech companies, because it is really easy to blame them, but actually finding the solution is I think probably increasingly complex. So I don't know if it's increasingly complex, probably more that we're seeing these things used in different ways.
I think there probably needs to be a guide that most social media companies work towards, but of course that will be different between different countries. But yeah, I do think they do have a role to play ultimately.
Now, police, we as a country, a lot of money goes into obviously policing, as happens around the world, but we heard that our police have been hit from a perspective of not looking after their data so well. Gun license information going out there, amongst other documents that were stolen from what was the old Auckland Central police station. This one I felt sort of really disappointed and let down that we aren't able to protect information that is stored by government entities like police, and we've had other ones in the past, but now that we're talking about weapons that people might own for whatever, whether they're part of a shooting club or what have you, gun owners, that firearms licensing information, that's sort of something that you should be able to trust that police would lock down pretty well. So it's pretty disappointing.
They left it in a bin or something, didn't they? In the destruction bin, they just left it behind, and then people broke in and found it. So it is pretty slack, really.
It just shows that for every technological solution, there's a human problem waiting to sort of circumvent that solution. Having worked with New Zealand Police, as a vendor in the past, they take security holistically incredibly seriously, as they should. And sometimes that makes it really hard to get stuff done. But I guess that's a good thing. And then there's something like this that's really surprising and a little bit disappointing. I agree, but you still got the human that can do silly things.
Yeah, and I think that's probably always going to be such an important aspect of security. Have you got the culture piece right? Because you hear different things around how different entities work, and it's they lock it down, and these things are so hard. But do you lock certain things down too much to the point where it makes it hard for people to work? It's always sort of finding that right balance, isn't it, to get a good outcome, and I guess the larger an organization is, easier sometimes for certain things to fall through the cracks. Cracks was what I was trying to say there. And that ownership aspect. Who takes ownership of this? Because you've got probably a chief information security officer, and you've got these different roles. But how does that sort of filter down to the everyday, and how do you get everybody on board to understand that importance?
The sad truth is, and we see this a lot talking to customers, if you make it too hard to get stuff done because of security, they will just do it another way, and that way is not going to follow your policy. Suddenly there's a offline copy of this data, or they're sending stuff to their home email addresses because it's easier to print and deal with it over there. There's 1,000 ways they can circumvent the requirements, but so it's a really tough balance about how do you get the posture right and the culture right, but don't make it so over the top that people feel compelled to do silly things. And I think
human error happens. Yeah, we all make mistakes. Absolutely. And I see there's just a mistake that's happened. Something got left behind at the move that they didn't know about. I don't think the police are negligent in what they do. I think they actually have a pretty hard role to play. But something slipped through. It's probably not appropriate with the type of documents they found, but they're definitely taking control of it. So good on them. But Yep.
No, it's a fair point. These things, are pretty challenging to get perfection. In fact, we will never get perfection, right? We're heading in the right direction, and hopefully that things are at an appropriate sort of level as to where they should be. But it won't ever be perfect. Now, looking at the world of browsers, something that we use every day. It's a couple of things that have been in the media. Internet Explorer, it's dead. Its days are done. So that's quite a relief, got to say. It's another thing that doesn't have to be sort of supported on devices.
How many years was that? How many years was it around for? Over a decade.
Too long. I think that. I think Internet Explorer was what brought about sort of the antitrust issues for Microsoft going back into the 90s, right? Yes. So we go back a really long way, and they did an interesting thing as dominant companies tended to do. Made life pretty difficult for Netscape there, but that era is behind us.
Yep.
Now, but Firefox has done something interesting. They've rolled out this new total cookie protection to users, and as far as I'm aware, this is not something that we've had announced by anyone else. As having been at exactly the same. I mean, we've got a range of the sort of smaller browsers that do some more unique things from a security standpoint. But with this cookie protection, basically, you put a silo between the cookies that are stored by one website and another. So normally, if you're storing these cookies, and Google can get access and then insert the adverts and so on. But with this cookie protection, a particular website you visit. So you visit NZ Tech Podcast, you've got silo protection on. If our cookies we're trying to plant cookies there that'll help ads follow you around the internet. Well, no, it's actually walled off. So this is kind of fascinating because we're going through this time of change as far as cookies. I mean, I quite like that we get a level of personalization online. Probably the thing that is actually the most annoying, and this is getting some attention as well, as the EU forcing these alerts on. You go to a website and there's an EU pop-up
about cookies.
About cookies. It's like, well, No, that's not really how I'd like to. I don't want to waste my time having to click, go away, and it's not sort of standardized, so it's different across a whole lot of sites. It seems like the UK government, now that they're not part of the EU, are working on an alternative approach. Do you have any thoughts on, is this sort of good or
I thought it's a
bad,
great
or-
idea. I'm surprised it hasn't been thought of long ago. I mean, we're all aware of, you have a conversation or something, then all of a sudden you start seeing all these ads and all these things being customized to you, and you just wonder. But I mean, it's getting quite scary how they track you, and obviously cookies is a part of that. So being able to silo them off, I think that's great. Because when you go to a website, it is nice to sort of see some customization. I agree, but you don't always want to know that that's being transferred elsewhere or being tracked elsewhere. And there's still probably quite a bit of big data being tracked up there in the sky. So I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, I think it's a balance because, my job is to help customers build better customer experience, and these things, when used appropriately, are a big part of that. And I agree with you. I don't want the hurdle to jump every time I come into the website.
No.
But I don't like the idea of my data being shopped around, to everybody. So the trick will be getting that balance right. How can, and I haven't looked at the product yet, but it's like, how can you, tie it down in such a way that it does give you a better experience on the sites that you choose to use it on, but not on the others. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Sony and Honda.
Oh.
Is this a natural fit here? We've got Sony and Honda coming together, a joint venture to create a new electric car company, which, as we know from looking at Tesla and looking at what others are doing, electric, when automakers move into electric cars, they are moving much deeper into technology, not just the charging side of it, but all of the other expectations that are there, because Tesla's set this bar that your vehicle is connected to an app. It's all, always on with the internet. And a whole range of other things which which I'm sure will keep evolving. There's more and more of an expectation, which I think the auto industry varies in terms of how they deliver on, in terms of actually that the tech's going to keep updating and have a longer lifespan than what it has traditionally. You get an entertainment system, it's like, oh no, you bought that 2 years ago, so the latest stuff's not going to work. We kind of starting to expect a lot more. Does this make sense for Honda and Sony to come together? I mean, I look at it and think, okay, Honda, well-known and well-respected sort of, car brand, but I certainly don't think of them as an electric vehicle company. Sony, well, good on the, the consumer electronics.
Audio.
They've showed off at consumer electronics show at CES, an electric vehicle, but there was that head scratching of, can they pull it off? So the idea of the two brands coming together, I can see something there, but I'm not sure. Are they quick enough to the game? Can they get there? We saw Sony and Ericsson come together on smartphones, right?
Yeah.
And they weren't super successful on that front.
Well, both those companies are Goliaths, aren't they, in Japan, as far as what they do? But an EV is obviously a very much going mainstream now, isn't it? And it's a matter of time. I mean, we're not really, EV cars, a lot of manufacturers are making EV cars hand over fist.
2025 is when this is supposed to we'll actually see the cars. So we're
flip
still
the other
3
way.
years out.
Yeah, because it's still quite expensive to buy an EV car, and there still is challenges around battery and everything else, battery power and infrastructure. I don't know. I would say good on them. I mean, are they in the same game as Microsoft and Apple in terms of that technology? I don't know. It's
They've certainly got more of a technology pedigree than say Tesla did when they started.
Yes, absolutely.
So, who knows? Maybe coupled with Honda's automaking expertise, we could see something special. But we'll have to wait, as you say, till 2025 and see what we'll know before then, because it will.
There's no doubt. There's a lot of technology in Japan. A lot of clever people over there. So they just need to try and make it work and get somewhere, because it could happen.
It does seem to me as though we will see a level of consolidation, with vehicles going forward. Either that you get a kind of ecosystem type thing where, and we've seen this with the Polestar, which seem to be doing quite well in the New Zealand market, where they're relying heavily on Google and
Right.
Android's technology in the vehicle to be able to keep up to date, to offer access to apps and make it very easy for there to be new apps that can come into the vehicle.
Yep.
So maybe we end up with this kind of Apple Android like thing, and Apple's most recent announcement sounds like they would quite happily take over the screens in your vehicle. So this stuff's not necessarily easy, and you need a level of scale.
Maybe it's healthy, So if you look at someone like a Tesla who want to do the whole thing from soup to nuts themselves, to be all things to all people, that's really hard. Actually admitting that our strengths as a company is X, Y, and Z, and we're going to partner with these guys over here who do these other things really well. And it's very similar to HPE and to Aruba. Here's what we do really well. We're going to do that, and we're going to integrate with these guys over here who are the legends. Thinking security vendors and firewall vendors and people like that. That's really healthy, because not only do you now not have to maintain all of that yourself, they're the recognized industry experts. In this case, Sony or Honda. So we're going to get some positive momentum from that relationship. I think it's really clever, but yeah, time will tell.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's a really exciting time when it comes to mobility and transport and vehicles. There's so much ahead that we can kind of see little bits and pieces of, and obviously the autonomous side. Now Ford have been talking. Their chief executive is talking about potentially 100% of EV sales going online. So that would put them in an area that you would look at as inspired by Tesla or Dell, if you look back a bit further, who were the first to sort of bring that into the computer market with Buy Direct and so on. I'm not quite sure ultimately how it would play out as far as their dealer and service networks and so on.
Would that be their only method of sales?
Disruption. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious, because they do need to look after and keep their existing networks working. I mean, there's going to be a window of time here, right?
Yeah.
And it's probably not much more than a decade, and possibly a lot less, where we will see the majority of new vehicles being sold being electric vehicles, and then we get to a point where vehicles with an internal combustion engine are a sort of a unique thing, right?
There's already some manufacturers that have got more than half their models EV, I think, already. There's already some manufacturers. So I mean, if they're going to be selling direct, what do the car resellers do in terms of that salesman? And I mean, there's probably always going to be used car sales going on, but brand new. I mean, are you just going to get in your browser and just order it and it turns up 2 days later?
There's no doubt there's a generational shift going on in the way we purchase things. Regardless of the industry you work in. But while I would jump online and buy a Samsung TV online, for $1,500, I'm not sure yet that I would jump online sight unseen. Actually doing the transaction online, I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah,
but I mean, where do you get the look, feel, smell, test drive? They're still going to have to figure out how to offer that, and Tesla does that quite cleverly.
Yeah.
But all the heavy lifting from a purchase perspective is done online. Maybe it's going to be like that. But I don't think you can completely do away with it.
You need to have a showroom, and you need to have an ability to service whatever your product is. Although interestingly, Tesla are really moving to mobile service in a really big way, and I didn't realize quite how much that they're able to do this until I started thinking about it. I had a visit here in the car park for what did I need done? There's the Model 3 I've got has a conventional 12-volt car battery in it, and they've sort of moved away from that with the newer ones. But I'd heard of people having their journeys disrupted because the battery would fail and so on. and I needed some new windscreen wipers. So pretty simple stuff. And so, let's just try through the app. That's what other people have said they're doing.
Yep.
And logged it in. They turn up here in the car park, sort it all out, done and dusted, and then they just go on to the next thing.
There's a
And
lot.
it was great.
There's a lot less in an electric car than in a traditional combustion engine.
That's the big thing,
I
isn't
mean,
it? Yeah.
like when I went to Tesla's and I was talking to them, they said there's about 200 components in the engine, whereas there's like well over 1,000 in a normal combustion engine. So there's a lot more can go wrong. So.
And you don't open up the motor and probably service it anyway, right? It's just like, oh, you got an electric motor there, and there's a problem. Well, most of these things are just going to get swapped out, and those motors aren't going to fail like a combustion engine.
I said, "What do you service? Every year?" And they went, "Well, maybe a little bit of greasing of the wheel, but that was about it. Pretty much nothing."
Yeah, I tend to sometimes joke, oh, I had to get some service done on the Tesla, or he had to, top up the windscreen wiper fluid again. It's like
a software update every now and again. That's about the best you get, really.
You've got tires and windscreen wipers and but it's a lot simpler, and so that will be fascinating to see how the whole industry pivots, because there's going to have to be a big change.
Yeah, I mean, right now, having bought a car not too long ago, I would like to drive the car to see if it's the right fit, because buying a car is still a bit of a personal thing, isn't it? I mean, TVs are not too different from one to the other these days, but yeah, a car still is quite a personal thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're going to have a whole lot of years ahead of us of big change and huge disruption in that space. And Ford is as speaking what's probably reasonably obvious if you have a close look. I think so. And that will probably vary according to the different markets in terms of what's going to work and so
consumers
in New Zealand versus US and so on. So I think it's going to be really exciting. Whether it will bring down vehicle prices, I mean, I think at the moment we've got all sorts of issues and challenges with supply chain and batteries, and prices are going up. The Model Y just launched in New Zealand from Tesla in the last couple of weeks. You could order. The price now between the Model 3 and the Model Y in this market, something like $1,200 or $1,300.
Oh, okay.
It's virtually the same price, whereas in the US there was, I think, a $5,000 plus US difference. So I think they've been, I don't know, they want to establish the Model Y into the New Zealand market because they're at that price point where if they go any higher, they're going to miss out on the vehicle rebate. So they've just got those prices sitting very close together. So if it's anything like what we've heard in Australia, there'll be a lot of people ordering these. And,
looks quite exciting.
I wonder what the time delay is from ordering to receiving.
Initially, actually, quicker to order the Model Y than the Model 3.
Really?
So
Stock somewhere.
they're obviously very keen to get those moving and out, and maybe to increase that momentum, right? Because they've basically only had one product to sell in the New Zealand market now for well over a year, must be a couple of years. So the Model S and the Model X aren't available right-hand drive at the moment. Certainly not in this market. So at some point it's like you're just seeing all the same cars out there, and we see a lot of.
I see a lot of Model 3s.
Yeah,
an
so
awful lot.
I think they do need to step into the other products, but. Yeah, kind of interesting that those prices have come so close together.
Interesting.
Now, this one caught my attention. Cloudflare announced they've mitigated what they're calling the largest distributed denial of service attack in history. 26 million requests per second. So
it's crazy.
An insane amount of traffic hitting one of their customers' websites. And then the bit that kind of blew my mind was they said, "Oh yeah, and this is for someone that was using their free plan." We've seen DDoS attacks in New Zealand hitting the NZX and varying others, and I mean, boy, it seems like a pretty good advert for Cloudflare saying, "Look, we'll do this for anyone. We've got." such an incredible ability.
It's a massive attack, though. It's a massive coordination, to do that. So there must be some clever people out there.
Yeah, sadly, it's easier than you think. If you look at how many, compromised devices there are on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
We're now talking about 55 billion connected devices by the end of this year. A large chunk of those are home devices, unpatched, unupdated, the fertile ground. One of the good things is this kind of puts the spotlight on the whole, what are we doing around cybersecurity? Let's not sweep it under the carpet. Let's talk about, how all these devices got compromised and are now controlled by these guys. But if you look at the maths of bandwidth, that's, yes, it's massive, but actually, you don't need 1 million devices to do that.
Yeah, it was interesting. In this case, they were saying that the traffic was originating from cloud services, cloud service providers was their terminology, as opposed to residential
traditional
connections where you've got those IoT and all sorts of random things that aren't usually secured so well. In people's residential situations.
It's an interesting, how they came to that conclusion. Yeah. Very interesting because, obviously we all know that a lot of home machines are poorly protected, but then to go and do it from virtual servers, you would assume there'd be a reasonably high level of compliance around those servers, wouldn't you? So that's weird.
Yeah, well, they've got a blog post online. So for those that are curious to learn a little bit more, there's a fair bit more detail there. Now we're running a little bit out of time on these topics, so we'll just scoot through quite quickly. Snapchat. They're testing the Snapchat Plus paid subscription. So that was interesting to see because we're so used to social networks being the place that monetize us, and they're mostly free. I guess we've seen Twitter with their paid option, but there hasn't been too much in this space. So it seems to be a slight turn going on here that they are recognizing we've got a massive customer base, even if it's only a small percentage that are happy to spend a little bit of money. Then they've got, if the features are good enough, then they'll pull in some customers, and they've got a no adverts as part of it. Location spoofing, and that's supposedly meant to be a fun thing to trick your friends with and so on.
Not sure about that.
And seeing stories without the person who's sharing those stories knowing that you've seen them, which is kind of not what you you expect of how these platforms work. So potentially creating some confusion there. So interesting. But if we've got that here, you've got to imagine maybe Facebook's going to have something. Of course, they've already sort of monetized to a degree with the commercial version with their workplace.
At the end of the day, if people like it, they'll pay for it. But probably a lot of the people on Snapchat aren't probably going to pay for it. I don't know. It's an interesting number of features.
Yeah. I think we'll have to see how that plays out. But it does seem as if it generates a reasonable amount of revenue, and of course, Facebook have had a huge dive in their market cap, their share price for varying reasons. So maybe that will nudge them down this track. And we do see these things that we get access to for free that sometimes do some reasonably dodgy stuff in order to exist and be successful. So maybe actually if we had some options to pay and they didn't have to be quite so dodgy, and that's without talking about TikTok, which of course has been in the media for Chinese government getting access to data and so on. So there's it's really a whole field that's fraught with issues, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better at all. So maybe we all just need to turn off social media. And so maybe social media just needs to be completely banned.
That's going back to the first topic again.
I mean,
just throw that one out. Yeah.
Some people might pay for privacy. I can imagine that, especially no ads. I think, we'd all like no ads, but
yeah,
I wonder how far it'll go. I'd be interested to see.
Now, a couple of gadgets that have arrived in recently. Microsoft's new Surface Laptop Go 2. So it's literally just here in the last sort of 24 hours or so. So we'll chat about that on another episode once I had a chance to have a little bit of a look. But I wonder whether I'm finally starting to get it for these devices because their Laptop Go product is a consumer targeted or education targeted even sort of device. So it's got some of the niceties and the sort of quality feel that you expect from a product that it's been a premium high end product, the Surface product, but it tops out at 8 gigs of RAM and 256 SSD. Right, so that's not really going to probably suit a whole lot of business type usage and broader things. So that was when I looked at that, it's like, okay, yep, that's clear where that sits. Yes, it's at the higher price points, but yeah, it looks like a pretty nice premium product. Oh no! I've set it off, and now Windows is talking to us. Will I be able to shut down Windows? Let's see if I can turn that off. Look at that.
Well done.
Our mics are such that they might not have picked that up, but if you didn't hear that, Windows was trying to convince us to walk through setting it up verbally. And then the other thing we've got, which launches tomorrow, is the Chromecast with Google TV. So that's sort of bringing together Google TV, and we've seen those Freeview sticks in the market and varying things running Android TV in the New Zealand market for a little while. And so that's coming in $110, gives you the Chromecast type capabilities that a lot of people have had anyway plugged into their TV. And then the ability to run your Netflix and Spotify and Prime and Disney Plus, even the Apple TV type stuff on there. So and no doubt being Google TV, the ability to run some of those local TV apps for on demand. Yep. So I'll be giving that one a bit of a go. 4K and 4K, 60 frames a second and so on.
It's not a bad upgrade, really.
It seems like a really good bang for buck. So good to see Google paying a little bit of attention to the New Zealand market, because if I've got this right, this has been out in the US in the direction of 2 years.
Oh, really?
So we have had a little bit of a problem with big tech companies that aren't consistently global, but Google, I think is continuing to pay attention to the New Zealand market. We are a small market. But, it's Apple that I think generally gets the win on that front of being the most consistent in terms of their launches.
Yeah.
And, Microsoft and Google and others can be a little bit variable. And, of course, this is a product that is, does need to be somewhat specific to a local market to get it to work well. But pat on the back to Google for launching locally. And I think it's a reasonable price point, pretty reasonable price point for what you get. Now, kind of keen to, since we've got both of you here as experts in your fields, I thought, hey, we need to delve in and talk a little bit about what's happening in the world of networks. So I don't know, maybe we can start with you, Andrew, in terms of what's changed over the last few years. You get to see all sorts of perspectives on the network, and as with everything, technologically, this is not an area that's been sitting still, probably from two perspectives.
Yep.
One from the sort of research and development and computing power and that side,
Yep.
in terms of how that's getting better, and the software that goes with it, artificial intelligence, and then on the other side, the threats and the cyber security risks. So yeah, what are your sort of big takes?
Networks have changed because the way that we use them has changed. The way that we behave as users is much different now than it was a few years ago. So it's less and less, although there's still an element of this, it's less and less around just connecting, a device to the network. You can do that with a, $50 home router. Much more now around security, around user experience, around AI. We finally reached, and we've been looking at this for years and talking about it, but finally reached the point where we have enough devices online. In our case, there's sort of 120,000 customers, 20 million odd devices online in a big pool of telemetry data that can finally give you the ability to have a network that will drive itself or make decisions or help you make decisions faster than a dumb human could. That's really exciting to me. I talk to CIOs all day who are overworked, underpaid, under-resourced, no budget, all that kind of stuff. Hey guys, finally there's some things you can do that can save some time and, make things happen easier for you. That's one area where networks have completely changed in the last few years. The other way, there's lots of ways, but the other way, as attackers and the methods of attacking mature, the way that we protect ourselves has changed a lot. We've seen some sorry stories in the paper about, companies that have not quite got this right. And, they've paid from a brand protection perspective, they've paid, from loss of business and all that kind of stuff. I guess it's really pleasing to see now that, security is an integral part, and the network it's not the only answer. Cybersecurity is a really big subject and I can't talk to all of it, but the network is a beautiful first step, right? If this device, which is compromised, can't even connect to the network, then that's a really good start. And then we can worry about how to fix that up. So
definitely. And I like that point around the sort of, self-driving network. I remember actually David Hughes talking about this, probably when I caught up with him in the Valley, and this was what he was talking about. It was very much a future thing, in the same way it is with our Teslas and so on. The self-driving, the autonomous vehicle. But now we're a lot further down that track to be able to direct and use the artificial intelligence to actually help control and manage and alert and block things and so on, right?
These things are complex. Networks are complex beasts. If you can use AI to get 95% certain what the root cause of a particular problem is, that's way better than having a team like Cyclone, who, if you're lucky enough to have them looking after your network, or your own guys who are spending hours, weeks chasing some dodgy problem that only appears between 2 and 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, morning. That's what AI is for, the needle in the haystack analogy. We could find the needle maybe, but having the AI say to you, I reckon this is a needle. The next step is, I found a needle, I dealt with it, click this button if you want to, that's where we're headed, for the network to be able to make a tuning change or change a parameter or change the how loud the radio is talking on a particular band, and to make those changes and then improve the user experience.
You'd have to agree, though, that if you go back 10 years, we've got a lot more devices, Wi-Fi devices especially, on the network. So, looking at a network, we go, well, each person will have roughly 3 IP addresses or 3 devices on the network. Well, with IoT and all the, wearable devices and everything else, that's exponentialed out. And of course, so what are we creating? We're creating more devices, more density. So we need, and it's hard to troubleshoot everything. So AI and automation is obviously to really aid providing a more secure and managed network, I suppose. And that's probably where, with Aruba and that, it's fantastic how things are moving.
The other area that I'm really excited about is we're starting to see, new Wi-Fi 6E, for example, is a new standard that around the world is slowly rolling out. It does require each government, of course, to agree, because what it does is opens up a new chunk of the Wi-Fi spectrum. So in the 6 gigahertz range, I'm not going to go any more technical than that, but suffice to say that it's around about 4 times the spectrum than we currently have today. So if you think about the crowded airwaves we have around our cities and our homes and all this kind of stuff, a lot of the reason for poor experience is how much stuff there is talking and screaming. Having 4 times the space is a beautiful thing. And we're talking the ability to talk at over the gigabit per second on a mobile device. That's pretty cool.
Getting those really fast speeds.
Yeah.
So where are we at in New Zealand in terms of spectrum? Because the 2.4 gigahertz, which of course that was just the standard
Just about
Wi-Fi
everything
for many years, but everything else was kind of in that space. Your cordless phones, which I think we've mostly got rid of these days. Then your 5 gigahertz came through, very, very helpful. But what's happening?
So
on that
the government has sought feedback from vendors, and they're considering that at the moment. Australia have just ratified their decision, so the spectrum is now open. So it won't be long, I'm sure. There are client devices already being sold here, and in fact, we're selling access points that are Wi-Fi 6E capable. It is software disabled at the moment until such time as the government makes the decision. But it's really cool to know as soon as that happens, we can do a software update and fix it.
It's largely a matter of time, though, isn't it? Really,
it absolutely is a matter of time. And this is a great thing for density, for latency, and for performance. It really is a game changer. I think the analogy that someone used, when we talked about Wi-Fi 6, which was the current generation, we talked about instead of having a 4-lane highway, we're going to have an 8-lane highway, and more cars can flow down. It's a good analogy, right? And everyone can get the highway analogy. The best analogy I've heard for Wi-Fi 6E is this is like just creating another 16-lane highway with no cars on it, because it's an empty spectrum at the moment. That means it's uncluttered. Everything's going to work beautifully. So I'm really excited to see what our customers can be doing with that spectrum once it becomes unlocked.
And in those terminologies, a bit more Autobahn-like, in that you can go
fast as you like,
nice and fast. Mark, from the perspective of Cyclone computers, and you obviously have this ongoing partnership with Aruba. Any stories you can share in terms of how you've been using some of the newer technologies and actually putting it out there, and how's that stuff played out?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've had quite good success over the past couple of years. I mean, with some big installations, sort of over the $100,000 going up to probably near $1 million, because with the combination of Aruba Central and some of the technology that comes with that, a lot of big institutions are really looking to try and get a much more performing network. We did a tertiary student accommodation about a year and a half ago. The rollout was, we were doing 235 APs in a 17-story building. I think it's about 17 stories.
235 access points.
Yeah.
That's a lot of kit.
701 rooms. We got it. Yeah, we kind of got it in. I think it was. I think in January 2021, they were still building the building, which I don't recommend when you've got tradies painting and everything else around you. It's not a good thing to do. But we deployed everything off site. We built it off site, had it all ready because we wanted to go in. There was a lot of people
so you could
walking around.
You could do all that testing and then just drop it in.
Yeah, well, we had everything named and labeled. We had it all deployed off site, and then we just literally just walked in and plugged it in, and there it's online, and off we went. So the deployment of it was just simple.
Nice to be able to start from scratch, design exactly what you need.
Yeah,
I guess you're not replacing anything else if it's a whole new building.
Not in that situation.
Rather nice.
No, not in that situation. And the troubleshooting of it has actually been pretty good as we've kind of got used to it and moved further and further into Aruba Central and etc. We've been able to identify, problems remotely before we have to rush in there. And because the student accommodation, we get quite a lot of calls and saying, "Oh, my device is not working," and of course we can see, there's there's 10 people already connected to the access point, so it must be working. And, or then we see sometimes that person is actually connected, but they're obviously not, for one thing or another.
Something's going on.
Yeah, well, we work with AUT with that, so we manage it all for them as a service, and it goes swimmingly well. The only bummer with the whole exercise is that with COVID lockdown, there hasn't been the numbers to really drive it very hard. So I would assume come next year that will change. But yeah, we're quite proud of how it's run so far and how it's worked. I mean, I have to say, in terms of a large installation, it went really swimmingly well.
So how would that compare to, maybe, something that was rolled out, let's say we roll back the clock, 3, 4, 5 years ago, in terms of, how is that technology, practically improved?
Yeah, well, the fact that it gets enrolled into the cloud, with Aruba Central, it doesn't matter. You can do it from anywhere. That's the thing about cloud.
So you got that central management.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's anywhere, anytime, isn't it? So yeah, it's.
I think if you went back a couple of years, you wouldn't be able to manage, your wired, your wireless, and your WAN, all of that from one single pane of glass. That was kind of hard. And adding on the benefits of all this AI and stuff you get now, that would have been done manually. We've gone to the days where you've got network technicians signing in and typing commands on the command line, or changing configurations of devices,
or having to VPN into the network to look at the controller.
Well, it's a bit sad, but the great news, and actually you say that, and a lot of customers are like, "Whoa, what do you mean? That's what I do." It's like, no. You're a clever network person. Your role is now going to be, all around governance and policy and deciding how this network should run. Rather than actually just let the automation take care of those pieces. Your values in your brain and how this should actually work, right? And actually, most technicians and engineers and customers are pretty good with that.
I mean, everything we do now, we look to try and leverage the cloud, and we're always looking for ways that we can, we're getting bigger and bigger things that we deal with, and everything from sort of onboarding, provisioning, right through to even billing. We're constantly looking to try and streamline those things, because we're a reasonable sized company now nationwide, and so it's very hard for us to keep a handle on everything. And so we're always looking to automation. So having like Aruba, it's a no brainer really in terms of all that cloud management now. Why would you not? So it's the bigger you get, the more automation, the more intelligent things you need to have running in order to make it easier and keep a handle on it.
Yep, and I think this is where, just one of the areas where technology
absolutely
has really has been moving, and the next few years ahead, it's going to keep getting better. But because it wasn't that long ago that the command line type stuff, that was kind of your only option for setting up.
Still a little bit going on. Still a little bit.
But being able to see these sort of centralized portals where you can. You get a really good view on what's happening, how things are connected up, what's working, what's not working, and so on. And it's
a bit of a game changer. And here in New Zealand, we've been very fast on the uptake of cloud. We're not precious. We don't feel we need to build this thing ourselves on premise. That's not a great use of time or money. So our customers have bought into the cloud big time, which is exciting. They've also really, really got the value of some of the harder pieces like zero trust security, and that's a response to what's going on in the world and the amount of people that are having a go at them. Good example of that. If you wound back the clock to what we were just talking about, and you wandered into reception of one of our customers, and there was a phone sitting there, and you unplugged the phone and plugged your laptop in. 5 years ago, your laptop would probably work and get some sort of connection to the network, even if it wasn't, immediately obvious one. But if you're a bad guy, that's a fantastic way to find your way into an organization. Whereas fast forward to 2022, you have the ability for the network to profile and fingerprint your machine, saying, well, I don't know what that is, so I'm going to treat it like this. Here's my policy, here's my rules.
It becomes much easier to control.
Absolutely. I'll kick you straight off the network. Right. Or another great example, Paul goes home and surfs some dodgy things between 2 and 3 in the morning on the dark web on his laptop. Sorry, but
painting a picture there.
But ultimately, the next day, you're taking this Trojan horse back into your organization and connecting it to the network. 5 years ago, whatever malware you had caught would have just bounced around, and the IT team would have to chase this around the organization. Yes, there was a bunch of tools that could help with that, but we're at the point now where we have a network that can sense that something has happened to this machine. Maybe it's a firewall that sees you trying to head out on some port or something. But the point is, we have a network, the ability now for the network to make some changes based on that. I'm going to take Paul off the network. I'm going to label him, change him from the boss to, sick.
Don't trust this
Quarantine.
device. Not
Correct.
me. It's not me. It's the device.
It's the device. and I'm going to take away all your access to the network. And I'm maybe going to log a ticket in the ServiceNow system, so the help desk actually knows when you ring them in a panic, actually, yep, it's expected. We'll sort that out for you, rather than, why can't I connect? So as we take advantage of these kind of technologies, the experience for me as a user gets much, much better. The experience for, the IT team gets much, much better. And, ultimately it's going to help our clients stay off the front page of the paper as they, catch some sort of malware, or, there's 1,000 things now that can happen from a cybersecurity perspective.
It's very hard to keep control of them all.
We need to keep stepping forward, don't we?
Do,
from
absolutely.
a cybersecurity, perspective. And, there's so much that goes on that we don't necessarily hear about,
Correct.
on that front, unless it happened, unless you were directly connected, to it.
Yep.
There's so much going on, and, had a conversation to an organization today, and just feeling the pain that they had been through, and you just you really feel for those that are hit, but we need to make sure
we need to help them out.
that we're moving things forward, and we're squashing and reducing those risks.
The one thing that I try to promote these days with customers and internally is that the attitude was, you go and buy your security, put it in place, and yay, we're done. Security is always changing. The whole point of an attack is to try and get around your defenses. And technology is always changing really fast. So you do need to choose products that can evolve with you. And I think that's something that we sometimes don't always think about.
Yeah, that continuous improvement,
Yeah,
I think it's key, isn't it? It's I don't know, go back to the Tesla, right? That the product is always improving. So you want to be picking, a brand that, once you're part of that ecosystem, that it's going to keep improving during its lifespan. Now, nothing lasts, forever in terms of the hardware.
That's your service, your software update.
That piece needs to keep getting better, needs to be, secured, and then you've obviously got to have the support alongside it to make sure that new features are being taken advantage of, things are being locked down and catered to.
Absolutely.
I mean, I still come across some people who they have an alert about a virus, and they just keep cancelling it. It's like,
it's no good.
Yeah. That's where sort of a managed service can come into play and sort of be a bit more proactive on that front.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked earlier about it being a combination of, tools and process, culture and people as well.
Yeah.
The network's not going to fix the culture and the people piece, but, everyone is going to have a network. So you might as well use it as I said, that first line of defense. Maybe it's going to make it easier for your people, to deal it, or maybe it's going to take away some of the more simple, straightforward brute force things, and leave the team to worry about the really hard. So it's a good conversation to be having.
Yes,
yeah, that's an important part of the puzzle. Well, that's great. Well, this has been really good. I'm sure there's probably a lot more we could delve into, so we have to do this again soon. And we will delve into some of these topics a little bit further. But this has been really insightful. Great to have you on the show, Mark.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
And Andrew,
thank you for having us.
To have you here first time, so it's been really good. A huge thank you to everyone for listening in, and of course, thank you to our show partners, 2 Degrees and Vocus, Vodafone, Spark, HP, Gorilla Technology, and Cyclone and Aruba. Great to have you on board and having your support.
Welcome. Thanks for having us.
Yes,
great.
Look forward to the next time.
Oh yeah.
And and folks can track New Zealand Tech Podcast down across the varying social networks. So feel free to, if you are mostly listening to the audio show, remember that that's becoming most often, mostly on a Tuesday afternoon around 4 p.m. You can listen in and catch the live stream across whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. So follow myself or NZ Tech Podcast on those channels to. In terms of folks that may be finding out more around Cyclone, what's the website's at the best place to go and find Cyclone?
Yep, cyclone.co.nz. And that's, the first place. It sort of lists most of the stuff we do, and you can always fill in one of the forms and have someone come back to you and sort of have a chat about what you're looking for with your business.
Yep.
But we are based in all the main centres. So we do cover all of New Zealand, which is great for us.
Nice. And what's the best way to track you down, Mark? If people want to.
I'm on the website. You'll see my picture on the website.
Nice.
So I'm there, so you can always get me through there. Pretty easy to get hold of me off there, but or we've got the phone number, so I can be contacted there.
Good.
And www.arubanetworks.com.
There you go. Nice and easy.
Yeah.
Are you on LinkedIn? Or?
I'm on LinkedIn, at RFNZ on Twitter, or foxy at hpe.com. So nice and easy.
Excellent.
Happy to talk to anybody.
That's great. All right. Thanks, everyone. And thanks for listening. We'll catch you again next week. Cheers, folks. See ya.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.